And this is definitely from the Sublime to the Ridiculous. Those were all very interesting and very useful. This is simply, frankly, a riff. And similarly to Paul, I misunderstood the assignment. I had heard liberating constraints. Farrah called me, or actually sent me an email, said, can you do something about liberating constraints? I immediately passed that off to somebody who I thought was younger, smarter, and better looking than I was. As it turned out, they wouldn't do it. But her email had said something really important, which is that means you can talk about whatever you want to talk about, since it's liberating constraints. So I took that literally because what I remembered was a very different set of words. It sort of means the same thing, but it's different. What I remembered was walls falling down. And I actually, as a planner, I think about that a lot. I think about the ways in which many of the structures in which we expect things to behave just aren't behaving that way anymore. Berlin Wall, I have 3 little chunks of the Berlin Wall on my bureau. My sister lived in Berlin when that happened. But I think about all these walls that fall down. Some barriers just aren't impenetrable anymore, particularly this sort of content consumer to content creator thing. Individual, institutional, private, public. There's, this whole new media world in which everybody is creating has changed the way that this wall operates. That we're on both sides of the wall, that we're all kind of in both places. And then there are other ones, mass and class, tech and touch, philanthropy and capitalism. It's amazing to live in a time in which Bill Gates is telling other rich people, that 1% of the population that actually controls 1/3 of our wealth as a nation, that what they ought to be doing is giving some of their money away. And yet some walls are so fucking stubborn. Like, why do these walls keep hanging out? Rich and poor, right and left, and tribe versus tribe, which appears to be the dominant fucking story of our lives in the world right now, is that tribes that have been fighting for thousands of years are still fighting. Why can't we get that wall to come down? And yet, this consumer creator thing, let's talk about that again, from the sublime to the ridiculous. That wall has become what I think of as a cloud, or a mist, or some sort of weird kind of structure with little areas of condensation and other areas where things are much more vigorous. That idea that a wall has become a cloud has actually been useful to me as I think about a lot of these walls, particularly this individual versus institutional. The wall idea is there are these people who make content, and crushed up against the wall are all these people who are interested in content. And the cloud idea is that it's just sort of a tangled mess with little coagulations. And of course, as people who are trying to connect with other people, we want to be where those coagulations are. So what is this like in a content cloud? First of all, it's democratized, which means everybody can create and connect. But it's also fragmented, which leaves us feeling isolated. And I think that isolation leads us to use celebrities as media. We don't watch the same shows anymore, but we all know what Lindsay Lohan is doing. And what that makes us do is get desensitized, so everything has to get noisier and noisier and noisier, so that the signal-to-noise ratio has changed dramatically, which leads us to need filters. And I actually think a lot of what social networking sites are about using our friends, our relations, and people we trust as filters. But in this time where the noise-to-signal ratio has changed so much, interesting things are happening. This popped up last week, and it was really consistent with something we'd seen in most of the research we do with teenagers, which is that most of this content creation is being done by girls. Be the noise that you want to hear in the world. And the article goes on to say that girls think of themselves as objects, whereas boys think of themselves as verbs. Girls are interested in themselves as objects. They're interested in the story of creation around their objectification. Boys post more videos, but who are the loudest girls? They're the ones who really understand themselves as icons. Those are our loud girls, our Britneys, our Lindsays, our Parises. And what are they using to tell their tale? Well, honestly, we moved from a situation in which we talked about public relations to a situation in which private has become public. And it's not just that the private has become public, it's that privates have become public. What those women are using to tell their tale is their vaginas. That is their primary way of effort. And it is a really interesting time in which we live in a time of the Department of Pubic Relations. Someone who wants to get famous right now, what they do is videotape themselves having sex. Or they step out of a car without their underwear. That is how you actually get yourself into the National Enquirer, onto the news, and into people's consciousness. Now, obviously, Sharon Stone pioneered this in Basic Instinct, and that was a major cultural moment, but this woman is the master who has moved from, one sex video, first she ran on the beach, and then it's one sex video, and then she's married the man who made a sex video with somebody else. really, you know, kind of putting themselves on a cross and saying, just use me, but I want to use you too. And it's even among the older set. This was in the National Enquirer last week. This does not mean that Jerry Hall was actually, what it means is that Jerry Hall didn't wear any underwear, went to a restaurant, and tried to seduce her old husband. Now this is a 50-something-year-old woman engaging in no underwear tactics in order to try to get who is 60-something. And this is what really scares me. I was in the house of a friend who has really young girls, and she was describing how her little girls had been, she caught them playing with Barbie dolls. And one of them said, and now they're kissing. And I'm like, oh, I remember that. I remember that too. Now they're kissing, now they're having sex. And now they're videotaping it. That's what she said. So what we have now is walls falling. Beauty is the geek. The starlet is the impresario. And privates are public. Which really leads us back to the topic that we started with. When we talk about liberating constraints, and I misunderstood it, I do think that it's important to